I want to start at a macro level. You've been in the space a while. Where is people analytics going at the moment? And what are the kind of the things that we need to be seizing on to be successful?
Yeah, way to start off with a small one. Look, I think that some version of this turns into like the ESPN ticker, where it's just like stuff's happening in the business and like we're trying to come up with that like super cool stat that like, hey, did you know on Tuesdays when it rains, like we've like never hit a home run? Like that kind of thing is
I wish we were that good most of the time. If you're building this business case to your leadership, is this what you do? Like what are you doing? Like
yeah, yeah.
what's relevant right now?
Look, I like in with my current team. So I've been here about 3.5 years now, and we didn't start big. We didn't start with like, hey, we're going to transform how we do AI.
Welcome to Directionally Correct, a people analytics podcast with your host, Cole Napper. Today's guest is Tyler Weeks, Managing VP of People Technology, Research, and Analytics at Marriott. Hey, Directionally Correct fans. This podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively bring workforce intelligence and AI into the workplace. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to Directionally Correct Substack newsletter, watch videos on Spotify or YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. If you're looking to build up your skills this year, sign up for the Data-Driven HR Academy at datadrivenhracademy.com, where you'll learn key concepts from Cole's book, People Analytics. And if you're looking to hear from Cole directly, reach out to him at colenapper.com. As always, all opinions are our own, and thanks for being a listener. So Tyler, I feel like you're like one of the few people on earth that I could just have this conversation with. So I'm really looking forward to kind of just digging into a few things today. But I want to start at a macro level. You've been in the space a while. Where is people analytics going at the moment? And what are the kind of the things that we need to be seizing on to be successful?
Yeah, way to start off with a small one. Look, I feel like there's a lot of great voices out there in people analytics. They're all kind of saying a similar thing, and I think they're right. But we kind of like I worry.
Well, what are they saying?
Well, I worry we get a little navel gazy with it. Like, so there's a lot of like, hey, we need to, we're not just reports, we're not just dashboards. We do predictive analytics, or we need to be in the business of making recommendations or enabling decisions, and that's 100% right. Like, that is absolutely the thing that like we always should have been doing. But I actually think like my personal bias in this is that like we need to operate more like an R&D team than like an insights team. Like I think that some version of this turns into like the ESPN ticker, where it's just like stuff's happening in the business and like we're trying to come up with that like super cool stat that like, hey, did you know on Tuesdays when it rains, like we've like never hit a home run? Like that kind of thing is
I wish we were that good most of the time. If we were ESPN ticker good, I would complain a lot less.
That's true. That's really interesting stuff, but that's not really like the thing that we like our real value is going to be. And I worry that like the word analytics sort of like limits us a bit, if that makes sense. I think that
Well, it's one of those words that means everything to everybody, which means it means nothing to nobody all the time.
exactly. Exactly. It's like I I think that we need to get better and better at understanding at studying how a business works. Like how does
Well,
it
can I go back? Can I go back real quick?
yeah.
Because what does an R&D team do? right? So I don't think many people in people analytics or HR more generally have ever worked in R&D, nor probably even know how R&D functions work. So what should a analytics function take away from R&D, and what does R&D do that is worth copying?
Yeah, like so. Look, in a successful research and development environment, you kind of have a few different stages or sort of like horizons that you're looking at. You typically have some amount of work that is like moonshot. It is like low probability, far down the road, just like wild ideas that you're like, hey, I wonder if we could, these are like Rube Goldberg machines. Like, could we make toast using like just the parts out of an old fax machine? Like, hold my beer. Like, it's that kind of thing that's just like way out there. Um, you have a every once in a while, one of those things will actually be a little bit intriguing. Otherwise, it's just kind of like, some version of Mythbusters where they're just like flying a car into the side of a mountain to see what happens, right? Like that's so you like you have those sort of far out efforts which are purely imaginative. Some percentage of them are going to like strike like inspire an idea that's like, actually like we could probably do that thing. And then so you have kind of a mid-tier thing that's like you actually have some reason to think that this might be helpful or have some legs to it, and so you put a little more investment into it. Like what could this be? What could we You go test it, you build a prototype, you put it in front of a few users, you get some initial feedback, and most of those die too. Like, but you've got this like big shelf of them, and then you've got where you're sort of ramping into like what you'd call like high volume or production, where it's like, hey, some small percent of these are really going to make an impact, and we've got to get this thing up and out the door and to everybody. And so like that funnel is probably like, I don't I think we've talked about this before. I think every team and every person has the same ratio of good ideas and bad ideas in your head. It's like 1 to 1,000, and there's nobody I think it's like a fundamental limit. Like nobody that's like smart has a better ratio. They just get through the bad ones faster. And so like I think the whole function of an R&D team is to burn through the bad ones. Like how do we just get all of these ideas on the board, test them, and get down to the good ideas? And
Yeah.
I think that rather than people analytics being either a little too focused on just like reporting and dressing that up as like value add, or a
Yeah.
little too focused on like blue sky initiatives and trying to sell those on PowerPoint. Like, hey, what if you gave us a bunch of money and a bunch of people and we went and did this thing? They're sort of building that funnel to burn through the bad ideas.
Yeah.
um,
So
but
let me ask you this. Do you think if a CEO or CHRO were listening right now, they would say, you know what? I wish my people analytics team were more like an R&D function? Or do you think they would see it as a luxury they couldn't afford?
um, well, so I I actually think there's a case to be made. I think
Sure.
if they heard those words, they'd go, "Oh well, yeah." Like, I mean, sure, it'd be nice, but like, I think if you were to really take it and break that down into sort of practical terms, it's a thing that I think any company can and should be pushing their people analytics team to be, and it doesn't take a ton of upfront investment to do that. Um, there's I'm going to use a sports analogy, even though like we're not supposed to use sports analogies anymore. But this one's so good, and everybody loves Moneyball, right?
Again,
The
no one's listening. It's just you and me. We can use all the sports analogies we
look,
want.
look, people for a while, like everyone loved to quote Moneyball, or they'd be like, "Hey, let's go do this like Moneyball," or like,
Mhm.
and then they would go and do the Yankees. Like if you've ever read the book, like they would just like, "We're gonna do Moneyball. We're gonna pay the most for the best talent out there." That's not the lesson from the book, everybody. The lesson from the book is that base hits win baseball games. Don't worry about scoring. Like, worry about just getting on base. If that's all you do, you can build a great team, right? And I think that that is true for R&D and for people analytics as well. Like, don't worry about transforming the company. Like, worry about building momentum one small win at a time. That's your best business case. So I actually don't think that there's a ton of value in walking into an executive meeting or into a boardroom and going, "Hey, we need an upfront investment of $100 million in people analytics so that we can transform the company so that we can get you more revenue." You're never going to get it. It's about identifying those wins that start to build the confidence, and it's like incremental investment, and then you build it up over time, not not just like one big. I don't know anybody that could successfully make that business case. Like, it's just not a thing.
Yeah. I went back in preparation for this episode and I looked and I realized it's been like 4 or 5 months since I've had an actual leader of people analytics on the podcast
Has it really?
on a quote unquote people analytics podcast. And so you're bringing a unique perspective to the podcast in the sense that you're actually doing this in your day job. If you're building this business case to your leadership, is this what you do? Like what are you doing? Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what's relevant right now?
Look, I like in with my current team. So I've been here about 3.5 years now, and we didn't start big. We didn't start with like, "Hey, we're going to transform how we do AI." We
Yeah.
started with, "Hey, what are like this? Like, it's the most obvious stuff. Like, what's the most painful thing out there? Oh, well, it's really hard to know which reports we have. Okay, great, that's easy. We can like make a menu and like I'll tell you actually, like, here's what really I think got us won us some credibility to go do more things, is that instead of building dashboards, we started building web applications. Because the biggest, like,
And what's the difference?
the difference is that dashboards like in Tableau or Power BI or whatever you're using, they only give you information. They don't
Mhm.
actually let you take action. So if you imagine that, like, if Amazon was divided into two separate websites, one where you could look for stuff and one where you could buy it, just imagine how much less stuff people would buy. So what we took the approach of, let's build applications that present data and let people take action. Let's shorten the distance between insight and action. That was our mantra. How do we shorten that distance? And we did it through some fairly simple tools, that like low code, no code tools that we had available to us. And that was the magic trick. That was the thing where suddenly we had a bunch of HR folks out across the organization that didn't have to have 4 tabs open to get stuff done. And they, like, it felt like a totally different experience. So it wasn't about like a huge revolution. We didn't even like pitch that we were going to go do this thing. We just sort of like did it a bit matter of factly. And since then, that got us sort of the interest and the confidence to kind of go do the next thing and the next thing and next thing. And now we're, I'm very excited about sort of the the work that we're pushing or
Yeah.
driving kind of across the organization.
Well, what's the most important next thing that you're focusing on right now?
The most important next thing that I'm focusing on is, how do we like. Has anyone talked about AI yet on the podcast?
I mean, occasionally.
um, uh, I'm very worried that we are in this domain right now with AI where we're just talking about the way we've always done things and slapping AI onto it and calling it transformation. Like, I'm very worried about that. Like, it just feels like, like the Henry Ford quote, it feels like we're in like the faster horses phase of AI.
I want a faster horse.
I feel like we haven't actually landed on the thing that's going to change how we run a company.
What do you think that'll be?
I think it will be. I think there's kind of two things. One, um, documentation is now code. Everything you write about what work gets done and how it gets done and how you should do it, whether it's a policy or a standard operating procedure or whatever, is now viable code for an agent or somewhere to use that, or it could be. Um, and if you're running a multinational, like, or a large company, and so you've got a lot of variations of those policies and those operating procedures because you operate in a lot of countries or a lot of different brands or sort of verticals within your business. You're not actually doing policy governance. You're now managing a giant open source software problem because you have all these people submitting or managing branches to your documentation, and if you were to put an agent on top of any of that, you would get all kinds of wild answers. And so I think people analytics has a huge role to play in helping the organization manage that data. Like when documents become data and code, and like it kind of both at the same time, like we've got to bring a different type of understanding of how to manage that stuff. Like I'm actually like not joking, thinking about, can I use GitHub to manage all of my HR documents, right? Like why aren't we like why would I go manage this in SharePoint? I'll lose. Um, so I think that's one piece, and then I think the other piece is that there's a ton of things, and I'm not. I hope I don't pick a fight with any of my IO friends here because I love.
Please do. Come on. Let's be brave.
Look, I think that we have gotten incredibly creative over the last 50 or 60 years in figuring out how to invent proxies for performance, proxies for engagement, proxies for like what it's like to work at my company and who are my best performers and how would I identify them and how would I help them. Those proxies are effective, but they're very low resolution, right? Like performance management systems, psychological assessments, all of that stuff is useful. It's actually like pretty amazing that it works, um, but it's very low resolution. Well, if I now have an ability to understand intent and context and how and who you're collaborating with and how effectively you're solving problems, I actually now have a tool in place where I can much more directly measure your impact on the organization. And I'm not advocating for AI. I actually am strictly not advocating for AI for performance management at all. I'm saying in order to understand Cole's job, not just not just Cole's title, what Cole who like what department he's in and how he's funded, but what Cole does for the company. Do I really need to go run talent assessments or run like competency, like do competency mapping, like in all these sort of very manual ways? Um,
Yeah,
I don't know. I think there's a big future for us out there that's much more objective.
I agree. So can we take a little kind of detour here for a
Yeah,
second?
please, man.
I did not expect to talk about this today, but we're going to talk about it now.
All right.
Did you read my article, The Camera? I know you
Yes,
did
I
'cause
loved
you
it. I loved the
commented on it.
camera. Yeah.
This is very relevant.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't subscribe to the Directionally Correct Substack, you should, first of all. But second of all, I posted an article back in December called The Camera, TM. And it was somewhat like a dark mirror. I think you put that in your comment, like
Yeah.
a dark mirror type version of the future of people analytics. It was close enough to the present that it felt realistic, but not super sci-fi. But it was essentially where a salesman who's selling this camera, but also their company uses it on themselves, is essentially the product of people analytics of the future, which is just a camera that can see through walls, that can see in infrared, can have biometrics, can monitor your heart rate, everything, and it could objectively quantify your performance at any moment in time and can gamify all work, right? So yeah, the example from the story is, oh, the person is taking a bathroom break and it's taking 15 seconds too long. Better ping them to get back to work, right? And things along those lines. So it's essentially in the limit of objective performance data, you actually are creating a 1984 style Big
Sure.
Brother
Yeah, yeah.
surveillance state. And I had this realization a few months ago that the future that I'd always longed for, which was a future, because I was used to the kind of the low resolution psychological assessment of performance that's more subjective. And I've always longed for the days of objective performance and being able to do that in mass at scale. And then I realized, and that's why I wrote the article. I was going to write an article about how the terrifying future of a surveillance state, and I realized that no one's going to read it, and so I wanted to make it hyper realistic, even if it was apocryphal. And so I was like, you know what? I'll just write a story. I've never written a story before, and see if it tracks. It didn't track. Nobody cared.
Really? I
Um,
loved it. I thought it was great. Yeah.
well, I mean, I actually got like, I'll put it to you this way: my smart friends all reached out, and all my dumb friends thought it was dumb. So So which camp does that put you in? I don't know. But the point is I'm actually worried about this. Like to your point about faster horses from earlier and about documentation becoming code. I always think about things in the limit because I actually don't think documentation becoming code is the end state. I think code becoming surveillance is the end state. And what do you think about that? How do you react to it? Do you have any inhibitions about it? Like
Yeah.
because that's where my mind has been at recently.
Look, I think, and I've said this in a couple different places. If you were to pin me in a corner and ask me what people analytics or people technology, because I actually think there's a really fuzzy line between those two. I lead both for Marriott.
Sure.
Um, uh, I think our job is to terraform the future. Like automation by default isn't good. It's neither. It's neither good or bad. It's just a thing. And like,
Yeah.
there are plenty of horror stories of for people who have worked in highly automated environments and just how like inhuman and sort of like horrible, like sort of like your story kind of camera like it is. That's a terrible future. That's not a human friendly future. So when I say terraform, I mean it. Like we've got to make the future a place we want to be. I think that those tools could be used for good or bad. Like for they could be productive or not. And like um, here's think about the indicators on the dashboard in your car, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not telling you whether or not you should upgrade your transmission or you should get a different exhaust system. What they're telling you is if everything is running as expected or not. Is there a problem? Should you go check your engine? There's a difference between diagnostics and performance like optimization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a salient difference. So for example, just given my background, I think in terms of like entropy, like the amount of information that's in the company. But there's a definition of entropy that I think is important, which is it's it's not just disorder, it's all of the possible combinations that could add up to the same thing. Like how many different ways could you get to the same answer? And I think when you think about talent, that's an important definition because in a company, you're going to have some roles that by design you want to be high entropy. You want there lots of different ways to be successful at that job. Those would be highly creative roles, right? Like you would want to see that somebody like that a person in that position is connecting with lots of different people during the week. Lots of different tasks are coming their way. Whereas a low entropy position would be like a highly tactical, highly repeatable. There's kind of one way, like you're processing payroll. There is like, maybe that's a bad example, but like there's kind of one way to get this done. And like that's really what we're paying you for is to like just do this like repeatable thing. I would, a simple engine diagnostic, if you're actually looking at what people do, would be hey, I've got a highly creative role. I might have a problem if it looks like this person is just kind of repeating the same thing over and over again every single week. I don't know if they're successful. It says nothing about whether or not they're doing the job well, but like, are they connected enough to the rest of the company? Or if I've got a very low entropy role and I see a lot of variation, they're just like all over the place every week, is there a broken process? Is there something happening that's causing this person to go run around and contact customer support and resolve issues that shouldn't be there? I does that make sense? Like I think
Yeah.
there's a very important way that we could go use this that isn't kind of doesn't go into that sort of camera land, like dark mirror land. Um, I think a big piece of it is visibility. So, like, one thing in your camera story
Yeah.
is sort of the implication is that nobody knows what the camera saw. I think in a world where we have these tools and we've got these great diagnostics, I think that people need to be able to see what it it's collected and what it's said, right? So that like they have a chance to sort of like understand or address it, or does it make like there's some
Yeah.
transparency that's got to come along with it for it to not be like the most creepy thing ever.
Sure. Well, Tyler, you have intoxicating way of breaking down problems and being logical about how to think about these things. Some might call that critical thinking. Um, what what well, first of all, what is your background and how did you learn to do this? And did it come from your days as a mortician or from learning from morticians as a
So
child?
yeah, that's a funny way to drop that. So funny story. I do come from a long line of morticians. I actually never worked at the mortuary. Both of my brothers did, and my dad did, and I like they've all spent time at the family mortuary. When I was a kid, though, I do remember going to like cousin's house and running around and playing hide and go seek, and there was like bodies on the tables. So I don't know. Maybe
Most
that's
people don't laugh at that, but we grew up in a mortician household. That's called good old fashioned humor.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, look, my background's in physics, and I started my career just in R&D. Like I was doing sort of deep technical research and development in an engineering department at Intel, and I loved it. I mean, I really did love the work that I was doing. It was very intense. It was a high impact. At the time, we were sort of like at our peak in terms of like ahead of the competition. I know that there's some challenges there now, but like that was an incredibly talented, smart group of people. Like I've very rarely been in a group where I felt so inadequate because there was just so many like brilliant people that knew so much more than me. Um, what was interesting though is that like after a few years, my academic curiosity started to shift to the company itself. Like electrons and plasmas and gas pressures and all that. So I understand that like that I can make sense of, but people were absolutely nuts, and like how the company ran and how we made decisions and how we and like I remember reading that McKinsey report that's like famous, like the war for talent one that they've repeated a few times. I remember what's that? Yeah,
I said a few
they
thousand
just
times. Yeah.
reissue it every
Yes, I'm
uh,
familiar.
um, but there was in whatever version I saw, there was like this thing that was like, yeah, if you hire the top 5% of the market, you'll win. And I was like, that's cool. That makes sense. How would I know? How would I know who they are? And that sort of like led me on this like journey. And I was like, okay, I want to solve business problems, but I didn't even know what business problems meant. I was just sort of like this arrogant, like applied physicist. I was like, how hard could it be? Um, and
How hard could
went,
it be?
dude, I this I if you're in this field and you're doing this work, like kudos to you. This is harder than rocket science. Like it's really hard because it's so non-deterministic. Like there is like in a mathematical sense, there is a lot of chaos This is a very high entropy problem, and so yeah, you're not going to have like very elegant. You're never going to have really elegant solutions, and so you end up with a lot of like rules of thumb instead. Uh, and so yeah, I mean, I've been in this space about a decade now, a little over a decade, and I still feel like I'm learning something new. And I sit and talk to my IO friends, and I'll be like, yeah, well, what about this? Thinking I've like got a gotcha, and they're like, well, this paper in 1987. I'm like, damn it, they thought that.
Well, you don't know this, but you're the second guy in 3 episodes who used that. This is harder than rocket science,
Oh,
and they're
really?
both physicists. And I'm like, I
It's
mean, I love hearing that. It's kind of wild to hear. I'm like, gosh, NASA, maybe I should go apply. I don't know. Like, but anyway.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, you kind of been beating around the bush on this point, but I want to hit it kind of head on. How do you create a highly creative and productive company from first principles? If all you do, you follow McKinsey's advice, you go hire the top 5% of people, and apparently some paper in 1987 told you how to do so. Like like how do you do that?
Uh, Step one. Here, I'm just gonna like lay it out for you. No, look, I think the thing the where I what I keep coming back to is, and I think where and people that are very good at this are already talking about. It's not like I invented any of these ideas at all. Um, but I think there is a big disconnect between the way deep experts in like IO psychology and in like organizational dynamics, the way they talk, and then the
Mm-hmm.
way sort of the industry talks or sort of sells products in the space. And I think it boils down to the fact that work is a team sport. It always has been. Like there's almost no context where like an individual an in like an individual truly like their output is truly independent of anybody around them. And so I think like the first place to start is that team dynamic. Like there's, like the concept of collective intelligence I think is one of those first principles that like the output of a team is not proportional to the sum of their IQs. It's how they share ideas and how they collaborate. To me, that is like one of the core principles. And it's I think the thing that a lot of like focus on assessments, not that assessments, I mean assessments have a tremendous value for what they do, but like they often keep us focused on the individual. Like how well can this person code? How well can this person communicate? How well like how agreeable are they? Or I mean, like there's kind of all these metrics, um, but they're all about the individual. They're not about the team and how they interact with the team. And there's plenty of thought on this out there. But I think if all you did was sort of like step back and go, okay, but how do I know my teams are productive? How do I know that they're working well together? I think you start to enter you start to get into social physics, like Alex Pentland's. So I think it was by Sandy Pentland, the social physics stuff. I think you end up in with like things like the Allen curve, which are very focused on like the proportion, like your likelihood to communicate with somebody, even on teams, is inversely proportional to your distance, your physical distance from them. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're in the same building and you can make eye contact, you'll actually use teams more with them, which is
Yeah.
crazy. Like you're never going to overcome that. So like as much as people are sort of like feeling like return to office is this draconian thing and it's all about like these companies are unfair and I'm so efficient by myself in my office at home, that might be true, but that doesn't make you a productive company. I actually do think that if you really look at the research out there, the importance of like social cohesion is the number one thing that we've got to go sort of rehabilitate, if we're gonna like continue to create productive companies?
Well, first of all, you recently published an article on this topic with Alexis Fink. It was excellent. I think Sandy Pentland was in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So excellent work there. And people, what was the name? I can't remember. The people
Of
working
the I can't remember the title of my own thing. It's like finding
something,
something. I can't. It's on my Substack. It's,
something about networks.
yeah, yeah,
I think is what
yeah.
it is.
I have
Yeah.
it. I have it pinned on my LinkedIn. If anyone wants
Okay.
to
Go check out his LinkedIn. It's very, very good. And you guys wrote an excellent article there. I guess. So one of the things that I appreciate about you, Tyler, is we're just kind of not following an agenda today. Like normally I have to kind of like babysit my guests and I'm like just trying to make sure, but you're like every conversation we've ever had, I'm like, this dude's brilliant. So like, let's just talk. I want to kind of take like a contrarian stance here. So my
Yeah.
entire academic career as an IO psychologist, I learned about things like the social cohesion and how important it was. And we also learned about things like, intellectual assessment, IQ, general mental ability, and all these types of things. And we always realized it was sort of this balance, right? So the famous Schmidt and Hunter that we've talked about on the podcast before, which is, since been not debunked, but, has been recalibrated because the meta-analysis findings were wrong. But it was essentially like IQ and personality together were the best predictors of
Sure.
performance. However, if you look at kind of the elite parts of our society, right? So you think the elite higher education, Silicon Valley, venture capital, the places a lot, and you actually like look into these things, which I have, and I suspect you have as well. They do not prioritize things like social cohesion, and they are very much in the camp of IQ is the end all be all of what you should be assessing for when, especially in the creation of new organizations. And that's a broadly held belief. This is not like a
Yeah,
niche
yeah, yeah.
thing that I'm bringing up. And again, these are folks that are, highly esteemed, would be very akin to look at the science and follow what the science says. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that we're so far afield?
I think that there's a bit of a. So there's this crazy thing that happens. I'm going to use just like an experimental example. If you took, those like cheap plastic bags that you get at the grocery store that are like outlawed in some places now. It's like super thin. It's the ones that like just like have like there's like an island the size of Texas made out of it in the ocean somewhere.
Yeah, just thin enough for a sea turtle to die from.
Yeah, those super thin ones.
Yeah.
Here's what's crazy. If you fill one of those with water and hold it in an open flame over fire, it doesn't burn. Like the water, because of thermodynamics, the water, until it boils away, the water actually keeps the plastic below its melting point. And so you could look at that and think, oh, that plastic actually is fireproof. It's not. It's because of what it's holding. I think that there are plenty of instances where you have a savant of some sort who is genuinely brilliant. And typically they are also extremely temperamental and high on low on high on disagreeableness, right? If you were just sort of like that person is like that plastic bag. They are extremely successful because there is a team of people around them that sort of act like an adapter that like do plug them into a company. So like, yes, you will get that one person who's almost like your temperamental like movie star who you could go build a whole franchise around because of their singular value. But I would bet you everything I own that there is a team of people, a team around that person who is essentially acting like an adapter to the rest of the organization. And if you didn't have that team, that person in isolation would not be worth a fraction of what they're doing. They would not have any of the output. So like, I think that there are strategic reasons and places where you might have somebody who is such an outlier. They are so productive or so smart that you're willing to invest in that, like that team that sort of that keeps them from burning up. Um, but it still takes a team, and it still takes people that are translating their ideas and into the organization and bringing ideas from the organization to them, and like and and yeah, they take a lot of punishment, and they sort of like let this person behave in crazy ways that you would never let any other human behave. But like, and so like, I think you see that and you get anecdotal examples of like, oh, all we need is that savant and we'll take off. And that might be true, but you're going to pay for it in like all of the support functions you need. Whereas
Yeah.
you could go have a bunch of people who are productive, um, and smart enough, that have a very cohesive team dynamic, and I think you outcompete that one person. I mean, I think that I think that's why there's actually proof points to say yes, you need just go hire for, like, I forget who it was. It just said hire the assholes, right? Like that is sort of an approach you can take, um, but I don't think it's free. I think you actually
Yeah.
end up having to spend money on the teams to keep them in, like, it's like the boy in the bubble type thing, like in this little synthetic
Yeah.
environment.
It's the Sheryl Sandberg to your Mark Zuckerberg kind of thing.
Kinda, yeah. Like, I think those are probably, like, you had two different, like, perspectives on the same thing, running the same company, and that actually probably was a good balance for each other. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Did I answer that question clearly? Like,
No, I think you're getting at it perfectly. I think, I guess one of the things that I'm just getting I'm kind of outgrowing is these childlike discussions that we have where people are like, never hire assholes. I'm like, okay, well, maybe you just never invent anything. Fine. You know?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and then there's other people that are like, only hire assholes. And these are childlike discussions. Like, I want
Yes.
to have the adult level discussion on these things. And so that's why I'm really glad you're here. And I appreciate the way that you're breaking it down. Because again, I think I've just kind of outgrown this. I don't know. You live in LinkedIn nowadays? Is it like your favorite?
Look, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is funny to me because it's like the best place to go to talk about a seat at the table.
Yeah.
I,
It's not where you go to get the seat, though, is
no,
it?
no, nobody with a seat is talking about the chairs. That's the funny thing about that like whole narrative. And so, like, LinkedIn's funny. It's just like very self-congratulatory. There's a lot of like posts where I think what people are trying to do is like communicate insight, but they're either doing a parody of a newscaster. They're like trying to be like the money guy on CNN, or was it CNN? Or
I
they're
always say everybody's trying to collectively win the Miss America contest by
yeah,
their answer, like world peace. And it's like, yeah, okay, great.
cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. Reminds me,
Yeah.
I saw a bumper sticker like 20 years ago that said World Peace 2010. And I thought, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, now
Yeah.
what?
Cool. Now can we
um,
go to war?
but what I will say in defense of LinkedIn is I'm kind of, I don't love social media. I don't love like what I think it's doing to our society, and sort of like the
Mhm.
outrage machine, and like things just making people sort of isolated and angry, which isn't great. LinkedIn still seems to be the one place where there's enough interaction, and you can put thoughtful things, and like not everything is going to be thought. There's a lot of not. I loved your experiment that I totally got like taken by. um
Everybody did.
yeah,
It's still
that's the
going,
point.
by the
That's
way.
the whole
That
point.
post is running away
Your
still,
most
months later.
most successful post ever.
Yeah.
um uh but for
I'm talking
all
about the dumb one, not the one where I
yeah,
did the
yeah, no,
A/B
I
test.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh the As much as that is true, it is also true that some of the most meaningful professional conversations I've engaged in have come out of something that somebody posted or interaction on LinkedIn. So I do think that there is I do think that there is a larger proportion of people going there looking for an intelligent conversation, but that's still a small percent of the total population. It's just so much better than like TikTok or Facebook. I mean, like, good luck on Facebook or, Instagram having a meaningful conversation about any of this.
I haven't been on Facebook since 2018, and I've never been on Instagram or TikTok, so don't know. Um, I don't know. I guess I want to go full circle to something we were talking about earlier. You said people analytics teams aren't necessarily really prepared for the AI transformation. They're just going to build the faster horses. What would it look like if they were prepared? And what type of preparation, like how can people analytics teams at least be the best of the worst in HR to be ready to lead these initiatives?
Um, so first of all, stop asking people if it can do something. Ask it. Just go in and ask it. There's a lot of hand wringing. I see kind of like two camps. I see people that are just sort of like jumping in and experimenting and trying things and integrating it into their daily life. You will not be able to lead an AI transformation if you aren't actually using it. Like, and I don't think that like leaders in our space or leaders in HR, as much as they say they want to lead an AI transformation, how many of you have actually done anything with it? If you haven't, you will not lead this transformation. I don't care how many PowerPoint presentations you put it on there. Like, like nobody's like, it's not even just that nobody's going to give you the responsibility. You just won't have any good ideas. So you have to get in. You have to get in there and use it. And like one of the things I've been talking to my team about is that this year our transformation is called Hold My Beer. And the reason it's the Hold My Beer transformation is that like I there is no excuse to not to try to do something. I had this last summer, I had a recent college graduate who joined our team who I was talking about this analytics application, like web application we built.
Mm-hmm.
The UI needed a refresh. The manager of that team asked for volunteers of who wanted to take on like a new UI. She raised her hand and never written any CSS, never written any HTML, had never done any web development of any kind. Like had some like SQL and Python and R, but like never done like built a web application. She went 6 weeks between raising her hand and deploying an amazing new UI into production for like our 8,000 HR professionals worldwide. We have a huge team. Um, that was incredible, and she did it all. She didn't. It's not even vibe coding. So like, stop using these like these catchphrases. It has nothing to do with vibe coding. She just went in and said, "How do I do this?" And then she took screenshots and she put it into our enterprise copilot and was like, "Hey, I want it to look more like this." And it kept giving her code that didn't work. And then she would try it and go, "Well, this doesn't work. It gets this error." And she just like, within a matter of a couple of weeks of just like iterations, she actually got something that worked. And like
Yeah.
that that mindset of like, I'll bet I could figure, like, hold my beer. I'll bet I could figure this out. If like your team has to adopt that mentality top to bottom, right? I like like and I know that there's all this like stuff online about like entry level jobs are in trouble, senior jobs are in trouble. Like everybody's like pointing at like the whose jobs are in trouble. The people whose jobs are in trouble are the ones that don't have that attitude, because somebody's going to come in who's never done your job. I have somebody who is a former housekeeper who has worked her way into different types of operations roles. She's one of my most innovative people with the AI stuff because she's not afraid to just go try stuff. It's amazing. It's like the coolest. It's the coolest thing. It gets me so excited. So I would say that is number one. Like
Yeah.
that. Like
I'm a sucker for those stories too. I've mentioned it before on the podcast. I love an autodidact. I love a person who just teaches
yeah,
themselves and just is willing and is willing to suffer the consequences too. Like that's the other part of it that most people don't talk about is like you are taking a risk, but it's worth it, you know?
100%,
So do it.
100%. And that's the thing. You can talk all you want about leading AI and the role HR should play and what people analytics can do. If you don't know more about AI than everyone else in your org, you're not going to lead it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how great your presentation is.
I
So
love that.
it's that
Yeah.
simple.
No, I
Um,
think it's perfect actually. That's really good. Um, you want to I'm gonna weave some stuff in here
yeah,
later that I wanted to talk to you about, but do you want to do some Cole's Corner with me?
yeah. Let's do it. I have a question for you too. So you tell me when you want me to ask my.
Well, let's do it now. If you want to do it now,
All right,
I don't know what it is, so let's do it.
you ready? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm coming from a management or a measurement standpoint here. So the number of times that I have been over the last 10 years in an HR meeting
Mm-hmm.
where we are tackling some new problem, and I'll ask the question just because this is how my brain works, how will we know we did it? What are we going to measure to prove that it worked? And the number of times that people are like, well, we won't, or we won't know. And my response is always the same. Well, then why would we do it? Let's just declare victory because nobody will be able to prove us wrong. Like if they can't prove you wrong, then save the money. Um, my question for you, and this is a little bit of a contrarian question, which things in people analytics or in HR in general do you think we should just save the money and declare victory? Name one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will answer the question. I will. Before I answer it, I'll say, you know, I've joked a bunch before. And I've talked about in my book where I said I've made a career out of answering the question, "How do you know what you're doing is working?" Which just seems like a very similar question
It is a very
related to
similar.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so the answer to that is if you had systematically looked at the HR function and said, this isn't working and we know it's not working. Every time we've looked, it's not working, or perhaps there's no even way of measuring whether it's working. Even though that's what I kind of take issue with. I actually do think that there's always ways of measuring. Again, they might be proxies, but a proxy is better than nothing most of the
Sure.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, let's put AI to the side for a second
Yeah, yeah.
because I feel like AI can completely reinvent a lot of these things and actually make them productive. But let's say, for the sake of argument, AI doesn't
Sure.
exist, right? I think historically speaking, performance management has done more harm than good. So it's not that it's not working; it's actually anti-working. Um, and so I would say that it is actually, again, it is a misnamed term where it is said that it's meant to like manage your performance or improve your performance when really it is a distribution mechanism of cash and rewards that is under the guise of managing performance. And therefore it demotivates most people and a few people it motivates or it satiates, let's call it, maybe not even motivate, it just satiates. So I'd say that's probably one area I would start. The other is just learning and development, probably more generally. I think almost everything I've done in my career in that space has shown that the learning and development initiatives, when you get to like Kirkpatrick's like level 3 and level 4, just did nothing or again did wasted people's time. So that's actually again anti-working. People do get engaged by that stuff, and they do feel like the company is actually investing in them. So that is the kind of the fringe benefit of L&D things. But if you're like, let's take the typical case of like manager effectiveness training. And if it doesn't make a manager more effective, was the training even worth it? Or can it make somebody more effective even? Or over what time horizon are we talking about? I don't know. Those would be places I might start, and then like don't because I think most people would say, oh, it's got to be like something like the transactional stuff, like an employee service center or like
Mhm.
payroll or something like that. You know, AI is going to come for those things. So I'm not even really worried about them. But I think that the HRBP community itself, right, is anti being able to measure their effectiveness, right?
Mm.
I know I've never seen a company that's like, you know what? How are we measuring the effectiveness of our HR business partners? That is the like you want to get everybody to hate you immediately. Start propose a way of measuring the effectiveness of HR business partners in mass because I think they would again tell you it's more art than science in terms of the effectiveness of their jobs. But also, I think there's like a secret percentage of them just like really doing really screwed up stuff for the company that nobody gets to see, and they just like profit from that. Um, I don't know. Did that answer your question? Because I think I said a lot of really provocative stuff. So there's a lot
Yeah,
of meat
no,
on the
no,
bone
no,
there.
no, no.
You want to touch any of that?
What I will do is, I think you've picked out I think like performance management is a good one that like I do think that there's some of these things that have a lot of value because they exist. So it's not for the reason that like you people think that they're there. And the metaphor I would use are life jackets on an airplane. There is some thought, and there's an article in like the Wall Street Journal from like 10 years ago that claimed that life jackets on an airplane have not saved a single life. Because if you're scuttling a plane in the middle of the ocean, in fact, there's an example where the life jackets actually resulted in a bunch of deaths because people put them on inside the cabin and then it filled with water and they couldn't get out.
Yeah.
So like, but they do serve a value in that in reassuring the passengers. The
Yeah.
fact that it's there is what's important, not the brand of the life jacket. And I think that there are plenty of functions that are kind of like that. They are important because for people to know that they are there and to feel confident that it is that they've got support. But like you could go spend all kinds of money and time like really innovating around the life jacket, and you could confuse yourself that you're saving lives because that's what life jackets do, and forget the context that you've just crashed a plane into the ocean.
Yeah.
So like it's really about psychological safety. And I think if you were to take, which is an important factor both on an airplane and a work environment, and if you took all of those things and go, okay, how are they contributing to psychological safety? You probably could get to some justification for why they're important. But again, it's not, like to your point, it's not probably what the label says.
I
So
love how you weren't willing to touch any of it. So that just tells me I went into a very uncomfortable spot. But you know what? I don't work in HR anymore. So there you go. Well, let's now do some Cole's Corner. How about that?
let's do it.
Welcome to Cole's Corner. All right. I got some rapid fire for you.
Yeah.
If you weren't into people analytics or HR technology, do you think you'd go back into the family business, or what else would you have done with your career?
Go into you go back into the mortuary business.
Yeah,
Um,
make your father and your grandfather proud. Would you go and do
sure,
that, or would you do something else?
sure. I could. That probably wouldn't be my first choice. I think honestly, like if I could do anything, and like I'd love to just like have a studio and like make art all day, man. Like I just like tinker around with like paint and blow torches and just make stuff. Like those like giant sculptures that are like in a park where it's just like made out of like rebar and old chainsaws and it's like
Mhm.
a horse. Like
Yeah,
yeah, I'd love to do that. That'd be fun.
I mean that would be interesting.
Yeah.
What I'm just curious because I think I'm inclined to agree with you on that notion. But what's the motivation? Like what would get you out of bed about that you'd be like, you know what, I'm really psyched about doing this today.
Honestly, it's the same thing that like gets me excited about my job. I just love to
Mhm.
experiment. I love to like play around and tinker with things and sort of like figure out how to make it work, or like could I make, you know, I don't know, like a working replica of a riverboat out of toothpicks? I
Yeah.
bet I could. It's just I don't know. Like I just like experimenting with stuff, and for me, art is sort of it's just another laboratory. It's just another place to sort of experiment and try things, and like it doesn't work, and so I try a different thing. Um, I just I just like that feeling of
Yeah.
of experimenting.
That's interesting. See, I come at it from a completely different perspective, which is, and again, I think this just is like what I think people who get to know me realize I'm actually kind of like an emotional child in some capacities, but I want to create something beautiful, you know? Like I think that's like when I have a good podcast, I like, oh man, that was beautiful, or I write a good article, or I do so like a great presentation or something like I'm like, it's the beauty in it that like really that motivates me and like gets me excited. I don't know if that makes
No,
sense.
actually, that perfect resonance, and I think that's similar. That's a kind of a different way to state like, but like, what I want is to like figure out how to make it. Like, hey, could I like figure out how to make this beautiful? In fact, I've got like
Mm.
a bunch of like the art that I have made has been specifically around like, could I make like I did a project once where I bought like cheap folding chairs at Target that were like $10 each, and I don't know why I was just like, could I make these cool? Like if I use these as my dining table chairs, would somebody walk in and go, oh wow, those are cool? And just like, even though they're $10 folding chairs, um, I don't know. There's like a challenge in there that I love. So
I love it. That's awesome, man. Well, what's the place you've never been to that you most like to go and why?
oh, um, place I've never been to that I'd most like to go. You know what? I really want to go to Costa Rica.
Really?
It's not like that wildly exotic, but like I worked with in a previous job, we worked with this amazing team that was all based in Costa Rica. And every time we got on a call, they were like, one, they were just like amazing people. They were just like so excited as a group. And then they always had some cool story about like some national park they went to there. And I was just like my one chance to go there, like for work, was like March 2020. So like it got
Oh
canceled.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I've been meaning to get to Costa Rica.
Well, um, do you want you want to come?
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
I uh, I got some guests coming on the podcast later this year. We're talking about a people analytics conference that I'm keynoting down there in Costa Rica.
Are you serious?
Um, yeah, if I could get you an invite, would you want to go?
Yeah, man. Hook me up.
All right, I'll ask.
I'll come.
We'll make this happen.
That's so fun. That wasn't a setup, by the way. Anyone listening to this,
No, I should just again just riffing. Um, if you were a character in any book, TV show, or movie, who would you be and why?
oh, like way to keep it narrow. Um, any book, TV show, or movie? Uh, you know, like this is probably a deep pull unless you're like our exact age. Like I and I don't know why this came to top of mind. I probably could give you 80 other answers. I loved when I was like a teenager, I loved the movie Patch Adams. I loved
Really,
that movie.
it's a good movie. Yeah,
Great movie. Um, I'd want to be Patch Adams. That's my answer today.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah. Just like really know your stuff and like wildly unorthodox in a really fun way.
That definitely tracks too. I love that. That's a good answer. I would. I mean, I forgot that movie existed, frankly, because it's been so long since I've seen it. But that's a good deep cut. I
Yeah,
like that.
there you go.
Well, I got one big question for you.
Yeah.
You come into the field of people analytics and HR technology, with this background in the applied sciences. We talked a little bit about first principles thinking. What do you know about people analytics that you think no one else knows?
Oh, wow. Including people in people analytics.
Yeah, anybody,
Um,
myself included.
uh, well, I mean, I'm sure there are people that feel something similar, but I think that I used to get asked a lot when I first made the jump about why this, right? Like why not like colonizing Mars or like, clean energy or whatever. And I worked on fusion early in my career. I worked on in medicine early in my career. So like I've like like research in those spaces. I think that this is the most important problem. And I could I wish I had all the faculties of a like kind of the persuasive faculties to convince people of the importance of this specific problem. And I think it has to do with the scale of human endeavor. Like as we look at the complexity of the things that we need to do. Like getting to the moon, I think took like 1 million people or something. Like the number of people just in terms of contractors and employees and like
I mean,
coordinate
wasn't it like 10% of GDP at one point of the United States or something
something
like
crazy.
that?
Yeah, something
Yeah.
crazy. Coordinating those efforts. If we're going to have any hope of like impacting climate change or impact like actually colonizing Mars or solving any of the big problems that we think we want to solve, it's going to take a tremendous amount of work and coordinating people. Like we've got to design, like we'll never do it if we don't solve this problem first. So I actually think that this is one of the foundational problems for like what's the quote around like, military? It's like amateurs talk about strategy, experts talk about logistics.
Hmm.
Um, we are the logistics. Like we are like this is how you get the work done. And I just think that we're too narrow. Like we think too narrowly about this thing as like performance. Like our job is like who's the top performer? Who cares? Like like and I know it's a little bit like blasphemous, but like honestly, who cares? Like if you can't actually deliver the thing that you're going to deliver, if you can't innovate, if you can't invent, if you can't get your invention into the rocket, who cares? You're just a tree falling in the woods. And so I think that like I think that's the role that I want people analytics to play, and we might need a different name to be that, but like I don't think people know that. Does that make sense, or at least don't believe it?
No, it makes perfect sense. I love it. I actually think you should write that up and publish it before this episode comes out so it looks prescient.
All right,
Um,
I'll do it.
yeah,
I'll write it up.
honestly, it was very inspiring to hear. So I think you should do it. Yeah,
All right,
I think you're
I'll
you're
write.
just the guy.
I'll write it up. All
All
right.
right. Well, let's do some. What am I reading? And I'll spoil it. All three are your articles. um, and I even don't listen to it because it hasn't come out yet. But I covered one of yours with J.R. Keller from Cornell a few weeks ago too. That will come out
Oh, cool.
before this
Awesome.
episode
Yeah.
releases. So I've been covering you a lot lately, giving you a
Oh
lot of
man, thank
praise.
you.
But
Appreciate
I
that.
wanted
Yeah.
you're doing really good stuff, and that's actually before I get into this, I would give my chief complaint on LinkedIn is that it used to be this place where people would share big ideas. And again, there was a lot of navel gazing, but there was a lot of like really committed people to this community in particular. I think about folks like Keith McNulty,
Mm.
Alexis Fink, Richard Rosenau. A lot of them have been guests on the podcast that kind of just shamelessly gave back to the community for free resources about how to learn and grow in this field. And so I see you kind of being as one of those baton carriers of doing that again. And so I'm really appreciative of it. And I wanted to say that to you publicly. Um,
Oh man, I mean, like that's like the nicest thing anyone. I mean, like seriously, like thank you. Yeah, thank you. That
you're welcome.
made my day.
Hopefully, I mean, I really mean it. Those people have, really shaped my career, and I'm very grateful for it. And so I see you shaping other people's careers. Um, the first one that we got here from you, and I'm actually going to get you to explain these if you're open to it.
Yeah, sure. Fire away.
Is the rise and fall of the blind application. The future and past of job seeking is social health. Can you explain this one real quick?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that have been true for our adult lives, and so we think that that's how the world works, but we're really operating from we are the outlier. And I think that like AI is actually sort of like precipitating a normal like a correction, not breaking things. So we built, starting in the late 90s, we built an entire infrastructure around turning recruiting into inbound marketing, where you've got a funnel, you're sort of like using SEO and driving leads and trying to maximize applications. And like for a brief period of time, and like I would love somebody who's got better data than me. I try to kind of pull this together from sources online. So like please, somebody that's got access out there, like take a look at this and challenge me on here, but like there's a brief period of time where you actually had a reasonable chance of getting a job through a blind application online, but it is a total anomaly. For the bulk of like modern history, the primary way anybody got a job was through somebody they knew. Most jobs were filled through referrals. And what I think we're seeing is that we're just returning back to that place. And if I was a recruiter, I'd be very excited about that because that means the value of my little black book that has people that I've actually talked to, that I actually have relationships with, that I've validated, and I have got proof points that they're actually good at their job, has just become tremendously valuable because you know what? I know it's not a bot. I know it's not like a malicious actor from like a foreign state that's like trying to, penetrate security at an American company. Like that's a tremendous amount of value, and we're going to have to learn all these skills again. I was at a conference and we were talking about this, and it's what inspired me to write this. And someone was like, well, but what about people that are uncomfortable in social situations? And I don't mean this in a like, I have a heart, so I understand that that's uncomfortable, but like you're not going to change reality. Like then they're not going to, if they can't sort of like develop tools to handle that sense of discomfort and get out there and have social networks and like have people that they are in contact with, what we call weak ties, like in contact with professionally, they're not going to get jobs. They're going to continue to apply online, and they're going to be just in line with 10,000 other people for a single role. Just statistically, that's a 1 in 10,000 chance. That's not good. I wouldn't bet on that. So,
I mean, they're not. It's not as bad as it looks. 5,000 of them are bots, so you're only competing against 5,000.
yeah, that's true. 1 in 5,000, even better. But that's what I mean is like, there's just a lot of decrying, like, oh, recruiting's
Yeah.
broken. No, I think recruiting was like in this weird meta state for a while, and we're just kind of returned back to like the thing that was always true.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember earlier in my career, I used to get jobs by applying online.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that drove my parents crazy because they're like, no, you need, like the classic baby boomer wisdom, you got to go out there and network and meet people and
Knock
all this kind of
doors. Yeah,
stuff. I'm like, no, I don't. I just have to have a good resume and apply online. And then your article disabused me of that notion that actually they were always right and I was always wrong. And I just lived in this little statistical window of an aberration. And
mm-hmm.
yeah, I think I commented on that on your LinkedIn
Yeah,
post when it first came out. I was like,
yeah,
my
you did.
entire adult life was a statistical aberration.
Yeah, that was a great phrase. I love that. Yeah, it's exactly.
But yeah, man, I think that like this is really helpful stuff. I want to hit you with the next one though, and again I'll tee you up a little bit, but I'll have you take us through it. Vacancy chains and the limits of internal mobility. Again, I think this was a little bit of a spicier one where you're getting a little bit into the skills debate that we didn't cover earlier. And I
Yeah.
knew we wanted to cover here too, but can you tee this one up and maybe we can talk about some of the skills related things as well?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think this one is more of a response to, again, like some of these are more of an education to folks who have gotten a lot of their education on these topics from vendors. So like there's a lot of narrative that's driven by like selling you an outcome that I just don't think is real, or it's a little too binary. Um, Internal mobility is a great one, right? So like when you like you if you would be forgiven for believing that like internal mobility is always good. You just want to maximize internal mobility because that's going to like give your people more opportunity. It's going to make them feel better about their careers. It's going to like all these things, but you have to understand that like too much is churn. It's moving people around, and it's very important. Like you might be looking at as a people analytics team, internal mobility in terms of attrition is leaving the company. But for a manager or a leader of a team, attrition is leaving their team. And that is just as painful for their team as it is for the company. And if you ignore that, you're not actually helping those leaders lead the company. You're sort of like, you look tone deaf because you're like, well, but look, attrition's an all-time low. And that manager's like, I lost 20% of my team right when we were about to launch a critical product, right? Because you went and ran a campaign to go like move people around. So the idea of vacancy chains is that like it's not actually free to move people internally, because when you move somebody, you've just created a hole, like you've created a vacancy. So even if your internal hiring costs are 1/10, like let's say they're 1/10 of your external hiring costs, well, if you do 10 of those and then in the end still have to hire someone externally, you actually doubled the cost of your of 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 hiring. Like
Yeah.
you didn't save any money. You just disrupted 10 different teams and spent twice as much. So like I think there's some limits to it. And if you're just sort of indiscriminately taking people because of skill, like we can kind of dip into the skills thing, but that was the genesis of this. That like, no, even this thing that like has like, it gets talked about as if it is like universally positive has its limits.
Yeah. Well, first, yeah, we actually just covered internal mobility with J.R. Keller. I think you'll like that episode.
All right, I
Go
can't wait
back
for
and
you guys
give
to
it a
say.
listen.
Yeah,
Um, the thing I'd mention here is kind of an interesting thought experiment. I always used to say, from a first principle standpoint, all an organization is a legal entity and a collection of human beings. And now you might be able to add in a collection of human beings and some AI agents. But, for the sake of, argument, it's just a collection of human beings. And if every one of those human beings got to do the job that they wanted to do and switch jobs as often as they wanted, the whole tower would fall down.
yes, yes,
Right. And I think that's the point of this vacancy chains article is like we undervalue stability. Like we do it just for, inertia based reasons, but we don't actually, from a first principle standpoint, look at our organizations and say stability, like there's a cost to instability and there's a value to stability as well.
that's right. I think that's beautifully said. I think that's exactly the consideration, and we tend to in HR and the people analytics tends to kind of I think adopt this language, focused just sort of sacrifice the company uh, for the good of the people in it. But if you do that, then there is no company for the people to work at. Like we do have to like every interesting problem in our space requires us to hold two things true at the same time that seem like
Yeah.
opposites. And it's not about ignoring one or sort of like making one go away. It's actually acknowledging that they both have to be true. It has to both be true that we need stability. We need people to stay in their roles as long as possible so that we can be productive, and we have all like the tacit knowledge in that role, and that person knows who to talk to and how to solve problems quickly. And we need people to be satisfied and have career opportunities and feel engaged and want to stay there. Like both have to be true.
Absolutely. Well, I want to go. What is your contrarian take on skills? Just out of curiosity.
Uh, Look, I on skills like again, I think this one is a bit like I actually love to see that this narrative is starting to get some traction because I felt like I was sort of shouting into the wind for a few years. I don't think skills are like skills have no intrinsic value, right? There's nothing valuable about you knowing how to code in Python. What is valuable to the company is that you produced code that enabled something. So I this obsession with skills again, like the internal mobility, becomes a little bit one-sided. Where it's like I've even heard plenty of conversations like, "Oh, we should compensate for skills," like which would basically imply that if I go take a course online and I become certified as a data scientist, even if I'm not providing data science services to the company, I should get paid like a data scientist. That's ridiculous. Like that makes zero sense from a business standpoint. It's great for the employee, sure. You get paid for really hard work you don't have to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so how can you possibly hold that true and say that performance management's important? Because you've just now created a situation where somebody is by definition producing zero of a thing. So their
Hmm.
actually performance would be terrible. So like
Yep.
I think it's all about tasks. I actually don't think that there's much value in having I don't think skills ontologies are particularly useful in and of themselves. You have to have a tasks ontology. Like what is the work that we do? How do we do it? And then it's who can do that work. And if that's what your definition of a skill is, great. All for it. But like if it doesn't start with work that actually has to get done, then like what's like what are you solving? It's just sort of like I don't know, gold stars.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect lead in to the last article that you wrote called Beyond the Badge, a case for outcome based talent strategies. Highly productive companies build highly productive teams, not collect highly skilled individuals. And you start the article out by saying it seems like everyone has been talking about skills based organizations forever. The vision is seductive. Deconstruct every job into a set of discrete skills, build an internal marketplace, and allocate talent with perfect frictionless logic of a logistics system. It's an elegant, scalable idea. But what's wrong with that idea?
The what's wrong with that idea is I mean it sounds great, right? It sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful. The problem with like again skills is that like it's ignoring interest. Like to use a supply chain model for talent that is supply, like it's logistics, like I've got supply and I've got demand and I just need to connect the supply and demand, ignores the fact that like unlike aluminum, people have opinions.
Yeah.
And like they've got to be interested or sort of motivated to like there's a framework around performance that includes motivation to do the work. Like I could go run a talent assessment of a whole company about who could be a delivery driver, and I could have 90% of the company pass the assessment. That doesn't mean that's my supply. And it's not valuable to sort of like then indiscriminately start like either assigning people or letting them sign up to be delivery drivers. Like my supply is really like how many people can do it. Like it's the Venn diagram of how many people can do it and how many people want to do it. That's my real supply. And if I don't have enough people if I don't have enough of either, the Venn diagram doesn't overlap enough, that's my work. Can I go
Hmm.
get people interested in this job? Can I go build more people who can do it? But then if I don't have a need for it, what's the point? And like if you make it completely focused on people, like what their interests are, I want to go build art all day. Like I would love to do that. That provides zero value to the company. So I think there's a thing here where it's like helping people understand that their value to the company is the value they generate is important. It's like we've got kind of this like work should be like all about my personal fulfillment for my personal goals and ambitions. I just think that's a little bit like I don't know what we're doing if that's what we think our job is to help them do that. Like I think people should find meaning at work, but I think it's about helping them find meaning in the work that we need them to do, not in just sort of like whatever sort of meandering interest like takes LinkedIn by storm and now everybody's an AI expert, right? Like
It's funny how that happened.
yeah, where were you guys 3 years ago?
Yeah. Um,
I don't know if I answered
I,
your question, but I just mostly
no, I think you did. One of the things that I think is interesting, and I guess it shouldn't matter because I find it interesting, to the organization's bottom line. Um, I think I don't know. I think skills have value, right?
okay.
I think there's a part of it which is I always think of it in terms of kind of potential versus kinetic energy, right? A
Okay.
lot of the skills related work is your potential energy. And I think the task really is like the kinetic energy, like how is it getting applied in the world? And you mentioned kind of the overlap between someone who has skills and someone who has interest in being able to do something. I am curious how you get that interest data and how that overlays with the skill data at scale, because that is an interesting concept. And thinking about that as like an alternative to an internal talent marketplace
Yeah.
is like a skills versus interest marketplace or something like that.
I think it's actually fairly simple, right? Like
Yeah.
if you build, so if you have you have all the positions in your company and you have job descriptions for all of them, you do
Yeah.
have a pretty good sense for demand, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty easy. Um, if you try to get like collect all the resumes or have everyone fill out talent profiles on your HCM or whatever, you can get some percentage of the company. Like chances are you probably won't get much more than 50%, but you'll get a
Yeah.
good like critical mass of like people that you at least knew in a point of time what they knew how to do or they claimed to know how to do. If you then also just take, you've got a career site, you've got like um, talent communities and things that employees can see and they can click on and navigate, and like they will reveal their interest to you. The things that they apply to or sort of like show interest in, I think it's basic web analytics on your internal career site
Hmm.
can be create sort of a simple map of interest as well, but you've got to be intentional about it. Like you have to actually create that. And I think the best use of like a CRM is some of that information, right? So like I don't think that that gets used properly, but absolutely, like I think you can do all. I think you can do all three.
Oh,
Uh,
sure.
I,
The the
can
thing
I
I'm
just?
kind of reacting to is
Yeah.
I have this proclivity, which is I'll try on new ideas like a new pair of pants. And I'm just like, oh, I'll try that out. And one of the things that happens oftentimes is I'll get somewhat myopic or nihilistic about something like, it doesn't matter at all. That means that none of the things that I do matter at all. And that means all of my career was worthless and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like spiraling out. And then I have to come back again, kind of from like a first principle standpoint of like, well, at its merits, an idea, it does have some value. It just might not, it might be being misapplied in some ways.
Yeah.
And I always just index back to the data. The data is what matters the most to me because I don't think anybody would argue, that a human being having the right knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics for a position is important, and that they're executing the task for that particular role. And this whole like task versus skills debate, I'm actually thinking about having a debate on the podcast about it, frankly, because I'm just again kind of tired of like these childlike discussions on the topic. But it's not like an either or. You have to
I,
have both.
I
Like you have to have both. Like, and it would only be a person who isn't thinking about the consequences or hasn't seen the other side of the argument that can't argue that you need both. I don't know. How do you react to that?
I agree. I mean, I could probably take either side of the debate and
Yeah,
like
exactly.
convince myself that like no, it's actually this or actually that. Like I think what I react to is actually sort of the predominant narrative is too far one way. So I think
Yeah,
what you're getting from me is strong language to try to bring us back to the middle.
sure.
It's not that I'm advocating for the extreme other end in reality. I just this idea that and I actually think your metaphor of kinetic versus potential energy that really
Yeah,
resonates with me. I mean,
yeah,
I think that's a perfect analogy. By by giving people opportunities to learn new things, you are increasing the potential energy of your company.
yeah,
Absolutely. Um, if there is nowhere, if you increase potential energy too much, you have a bomb, right? Like you don't, if you don't have opportunities and you just keep pumping energy into this system, but there's nowhere for it to turn into kinetic energy because you don't actually have those jobs,
yeah.
it's going to explode, and it's going to explode in the form of attrition. Like you're just going to have people leave and get frustrated because you just created a whole lot of energy that has nowhere to go.
I think about it like a developing nation that has too high of birth rates and no jobs.
Right.
It typically falls into like some kind of war.
Yeah.
It really too much potential energy. But then the vice versa is like Japan, where the birth rates,
That's right.
decline and the population is declining. So the potential energy, the oxygen's just getting sucked out of the balloon.
Right.
And you can see this playing out in the real world that, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the arguments I make on here are just like Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, children, but really it's about getting into that Goldilocks zone of the potential energy, not just, I don't know. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
You're just Buddhist. You didn't know it. It's all about the middle way.
I guess so. Maybe so. Tyler, this has been a lot of fun. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I kind of needed this in my life, to be honest with you. I've just been needing an episode where I'm not just, sitting here like doing PR for somebody. So I don't know. Anything you want to wrap up with? Anything we haven't covered?
No, I mean, I think this was so much fun, dude. Like, honestly, like every time we talk, I come away, I'm like, actually, I do pretty cool work. Like, I'm pretty excited about this. Look, I love the work you're doing, man. I think this podcast is awesome. I want more people excited about this. And I meant what I said. I think that this is one of those important things for us to go figure out if we want to do anything amazing. Like, we've got to solve this first. And so yeah, thanks for carrying the torch, man.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're inspiring a lot of people. So it's good stuff.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, on that note, where can people find you if they want to reach out?
I'm on LinkedIn, and I also have a Substack. That's probably the two best places to find me. So
it's the best Substack on people analytics currently. There you go, Tyler Weeks. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, People Analytics podcast with your host Cole Napper and our today's guest Tyler Weeks. Thanks for joining me, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Cole.